Hello there, Parth Sharma this side, bringing you top 15 games played by Garry Kasparov. Do take time to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. If you are already subscribed, then do press the bell icon for future notifications. And if you like my work, then do consider supporting me on Patreon and PayPal because your support is my motivation, which keeps me going. So, we have looked at 15, 14, 13, 12, and 11. So we have come down to game 10, the best game played by Garry, top 15 best chess games played by Garry Kasparov. So our countdown has come to number 10, and here I'll be showing you the game between two of the bitter rivals, and these two players had quite contrasting styles. A tactical Kasparov versus a grinder Karpov, and this was a critical match. This was the game number 24 from the 1987 match, which took place in Seville. Well, this was game number 24, and up to game number 22, the scoreline read 11 apiece. And in game 23, Kasparov was black to Karpov's white, and Karpov played an English opening. Both had somewhat equal positions, but they were all muggled up in time pressure, and both cracked. But in the end, it was Kasparov who made the last mistake, and he couldn't believe his eyes. He shut his eyes when he played a terrible blunder that I would be covering later, and he was kept warned by arbiter to write his moves because he was so low on time, and in the time pressure he cracked, and he lost game number 23. So the scoreline read 12 to Karpov and 11 to Kasparov. And we come to game number 24, and the point was that Kasparov had to win this game to retain championship, because at that time there were no tie breaks, so the challenger has to score at least 12 and a half points to win the match. And if Kasparov wins it, he retains the championship, and if Karpov loses, well, he will lose the match, and he would only need a draw to secure the championship. But the main thing was that Kasparov had white pieces in this game. So there we go. Game number 24 from 1987 World Chess Championship match 1987, and game number 10 from the list of Garry Kasparov's top 15 chess games. There we go. Without further ado, let's go on with this. C4, E6, the English opening, Knight F3, Knight F6, invitation to probably Queen's Gambit declined. G3, D5, invitation to Catalan, but he plays B3. That's a good move. Possibly trying to fianchetto to both his bishops, and with authority, that would be great. Bishop E7, so he's aligned to his Queen's Gambit position. That's a good move. Bishop G2, fianchettoing his king's bishop. Castles, castles, B6, so he's also trying to fianchetto his queen's bishop, which would be ideal competitor to this bishop, taking this diagonal, and also to looking at these exchanges. This would open lines for this. Bishop b2, bishop e7, e3, and the best move that I thought was to play c5 to get more authority in the center and try to gain a lot of space in the center of the board. Very essential indeed. Since this knight already controls this e4 square, it won't be easy for white to establish its own center, whereas c5 just puts more stronghold in the center of the board. But Karpov plays knight b d7, which isn't bad either. Probably he would be trying to play e5 and only then c5, then might be looking as well with the moves like d4, sorts of exchanges going on here, and it would be total domination for black in that position. So knight c3, Kasparov is not hurrying any bit for that. And now a very surprising move by Karpov, but to say that more of a surprise, it was a justified move. He plays knight e4 looking for the exchange, because remember, Karpov only needs a draw to secure the match and become world champion yet again. Kasparov denies, or I should say refuses the exchange, knight e2, and now a move that Kasparov said was pretty much un-Karpov like, and this was a reflection of his assessment of the game, or his uh, pre-psychology of this game, that he was playing in his mind that I only need draw, I only need draw, and he plays a5. And this is somewhat takes initiative, if ever there was, with black away, because if he had played d takes, he probably that would have been a much more strong move, or I should say a challenging move to Kasparov, but he plays a5, and this also surprised Kasparov because the intention was pretty clear from Karpov's side after the move a5 that he is going for a draw, he doesn't want to win. So anyway, d3 by Kasparov, kicking that knight off, but he plays bishop f6, queen c2 and exchanging the bishops, and now that knight drops back to d6, and Kasparov doesn't take time to take on d5, he just quickly grabs that pawn, bishop takes, and d4. So again, strong holding the center, which is what white has done in this position, holding the c5 and the e5 squares. And also keeping this pawn backward is one more thing, because if this pawn advances, then it would be a big liability, and also you cannot play because after exchange then there can be two pawn islands, and if you take with the knight, then this becomes a very nasty backward pawn, or I should say very weak backward pawn in the position, and these holes on the light squares, maybe, although there is this bishop, but once this knight gets operating, the bishops get off, then this b6 square, if c5 is played, will look very shaky indeed. c5, rook fd1, there we go, c5, not exchanging yet, rook c8, knight f4, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and queen e7, so getting out of this line of the queen. And again, as I said, very shaky, this is coming anytime soon. Rook a c1, rook fd8, and now Kasparov takes the pawn on c5, and knight takes c5, and as I said, this backward pawn will really haunt Kasparov, or I would say Karpov, because as already mentioned, with this playing this move c5, this pawn is looking really weak. b4 by Kasparov, just challenging not only pawn but also the knight, but that pawn can be taken, a takes b, and when Kasparov, or I should say Karpov, made this move a takes b, he had only 22 minutes to make his last, or I should say next 19 moves, whereas Kasparov had 26 minutes to make his next 19 moves, and his 19 is his 22nd move was pretty easy, queen takes b4, but Karpov's 22nd move wasn't easy, because as I said, this weakness, I'm keep repeating this because this is a very big point here, this b6 pawn, and this looks really bad. Queen a7 defending the pawn on b6, the a3 defending his own pawn on which was hanging on a2, but this pawn wasn't too harmful. It was pretty innocuous compared to this pawn, which is a bane in this position. Also defending the knight on c5. There we go, knight f5, and if Kasparov had taken a little bit more time, then he would have simply exchanged the rooks. That position would have been a little bit better, but nevertheless, rook b1, just putting more pressure on this pawn. Now rook takes d1, this is forced, rook takes, and queen c7, just stopping this, although it's stopped by the knight, but still keeping more activity in the position. Knight d3, and Kasparov wants to take this knight by playing this or this, or maybe he's inviting to take. Perhaps Kasparov won't go for this exchange, because then this pawn becomes a monster rather than a weakness. But Karpov had only 10 minutes for his next 13 moves and plays h6, so he was really under pressure on time, and he only needed a draw. But whereas Kasparov was the one who should be having a lot of pressure to retain his title, and as I said, no tie breaks, the score 12 apiece would be good enough for Kasparov. Rook c1, so he keeps this pin. This is pinned. So knight e7, queen b5, just putting more pressure here. Knight goes to a5, a4 pushing the pawn. Knight goes to d6 attacking the queen, queen goes back to b1, queen a7, knight e5, and now the next move of Karpov was a disastrous move. But there was nothing to blame him, because he made his next move having only 3 minutes on his clock for his next 9 moves against Kasparov's 12 minutes for his next 9 moves. And what did he play? He plays knight takes a4, and this is a blunder. And this gives a little hope of opportunity. He just went pawn hungry and just took the pawn. Rook takes c8 check, knight takes c8 is the only move. But here surprisingly Kasparov himself also blunders, and he after the game he says that it was a nervous reaction and he plays queen d1. He said a nervous reaction to pick the queen and put it to a wrong square. Queen b5 would have put a lot of pressure with the threats of playing this, and also not to forget to play this as well. This was a decoy pawn which Karpov took, but Kasparov returned the favor by playing queen d1. And here comes a very critical moment in this position. Now here the best move in this position is to just retreat your knight back, and probably that would have been better. But here Karpov returns the favor back again, and he plays knight e7. And after the game he said, I was presented with an excellent opportunity to seize the initiative. One accurate move and I saw it, but for some reason I considered it to be impossible, and after it white would have to fight for a draw, and I would again have become world champion. But I had no time, I miscalculated and chose the wrong plan, and indeed it was a wrong plan. Now Kasparov here played queen d8, which is winning anyway. But the best move in this position would have been to play just bishop h5, just bringing everything towards that black king, because this queen is really out of place and this knight is stopping queen's path on f7. f7 is going really soon, no defending that, and if you play moves like f6, then queen d8 is totally crushing. Beg your pardon, queen d8. There we go. So you can play king h7, bishop takes, knight c5 and h4, and white consolidates. After knight e7, he plays queen d8 check, which is equally good. King h7 is the only move, and now knight takes f7. So he gained his pawn back, and he himself has a deadly attack with the move like bishop e4, threatening queen h8 mate is one of the things going around the corner. So knight g6 defends against that. Queen e8, looking at this knight. But now Karpov exchanging the knights like this, queen e7, and Karpov takes the knight, but there is a problem here. After bishop e4, this queen is and this king is somewhat tied up with the defense of this pinned knight, and it is very difficult to take this knight out of this pin. Perhaps impossible, I would say, because if king goes back, then then we might have even queen a8, and that doesn't look really good indeed. So he plays king g8, and as I said, the queen is tied up with this knight's defense. So queen b5 picks this backward pawn, as we mentioned, which was the reason of c5. Which was the consequence of c5. And the queen b5 picks this backward pawn, knight f8, queen takes b6, queen f6, queen b5, queen e7, and the game was adjourned here, and Kasparov had to seal his next move, and he had to seal it. He had to seal a very good move indeed. But looking at the board, it is pretty interesting that although white has an extra pawn, but these pawns are on the same side with this king sitting on g8, which means that even though this extra pawn, there are still chances that black would be able to hold this position. And Kasparov plays king g2, which was a good move. Karpov plays g6, queen a5 by Kasparov, so he's trying to press him on the king side, try to create more complications in the position. That's a good idea. Queen g7, so he's keeping his pieces closer to the king at one side of the board, which would mean that everything would be safe, solidified, no weaknesses in the position, no targets. That's a good move. Queen c5, queen f7, and here Kasparov plays h4, and it was pretty interesting that after the game was adjourned and when the game continued, Karpov didn't look too confident in defending this position, and Kasparov remarked that he looked doomed and he didn't trust himself defending this position, and he thought that it was 30% draw and 70% loss for himself. So his body language literally created a lot of drama on the chessboard, and which was quite obvious because you need a draw, and when you see something like this, it would be Kasparov who should be under pressure rather than Karpov, as I already mentioned. But his body language played a big role in Kasparov's confidence, and he was moving confidently and he played h4 confidently. But since that thought of that underconfidence of defending the position was looming over his head, and Karpov makes a blunder. He plays h5. Probably knight d7 would have been a better move in this position. Trying to keeping solid structure. But and after the game, Kasparov said, "I was very surprised when Karpov weakened his defenses. This fixes the pawn structure. It has lost its flexibility and contains more targets." Well, we will see what happens. Queen c6, so he consolidates on the light squares. Now queen e7, bishop d3, queen f7. What does this do? It fixes this pawn structure as mentioned by Kasparov, but not just only that. It would mean that now this extra pawn will be playing against this sole pawn, because now there is no g4, no g5 thing, and all the play would be in the center with only these two versus one. And with this bishop already looking at this pawn, already restricting the movements of this queen and this knight, with the combination of this queen and this bishop along with these two against one in the center, I think white is totally winning this position. This was the main motive by playing h5 to fixing this, and this turns out to be a great mistake. Queen d6, king g7, e4, there we go. King g8, bishop c4, so he's just moving back and forth, nothing else. Queen e5 check, king g8, so now Kasparov wants to exchange the queens, and once he's successful in doing that, these two pawns against this one only, one sole pawn will bring the trophy home. I should say bring the championship home for Kasparov. Queen d6, king g7, bishop b5, possibly looking to play queen here and then bishop back here, maybe who knows. King g8, bishop c6, that's a good move. Queen a7, queen b4, queen c7, queen b7, just threatening to exchange queens, and probably he could have taken it. That would have been the best option. Queen d8 was played, and after e5, the best move would have been to play queen d3 to solidify more on this g6, although not attacked at the moment, but still that would have been better. But here he plays queen a5 to attack this pawn, and which was a mistake. He plays bishop e8, and no time to taking this because queen f7 check will pick the knight, and things can turn deadly dangerous then. So he has to play queen c5 defending the knight. Queen f7 check, king h8, the knight is defended. Bishop a4, queen d5 check, king h2, queen c5, just looking at the knight. Bishop b3, attacking the pawn on e6. So there are so many weaknesses only because of this queen a5 move. And now he is allowed this queen, white queen, to come into black's territory and more dangerously closer to this king. Queen c8, protecting knight this way. Bishop d1, queen c5, he's just going back and forth, and king g2 was played by Kasparov, and here Karpov thinks for 8 minutes and he thought that what else he can do. Well, he did most ultimate thing that he can do on a losing position. He resigned the game, and that was pretty interesting. And what happened was that Kasparov became world champion yet again, or I should say he defended his title against Karpov because the score was 12 apiece, and if there were no tie breaks then, and if the scoreline read 12 apiece, then the champion retains the title, and which is what happened here. But after the game, Kasparov thought for this line that Karpov might have chosen. He thought for queen d5 check, bishop f3, queen c5 check, bishop e4 is looking to grab this pawn, and then black plays queen e3, and if white goes to take this pawn, like say bishop takes g6, then black captures the bishop, queen has to take the knight, and there comes this queen f3, and you cannot take the queen because that will be stalemate. And Kasparov said that how on earth can he miss this trick? But instead of queen e3, he can simply play king h3, and the position is totally hopeless for Karpov. He can do absolutely nothing, and only then can he try to take the pawn on g6. But he has to be careful because after king h3, queen b4, still you cannot take this pawn, but rather play f3 and the position would still be fine. So it came down to this, king g2, and after which Karpov resigned and Kasparov retained the title. Wow, what a thrilling encounter this was, and this shows the nerves of steel because when everything is at stake, then you have to just fight it all out. And this is one of the reasons that Kasparov was world champion those days and is considered to be the greatest, one of the greatest chess players of all time. So I looked at game 10. Do stay tuned for further 9 games that I would be looking at from this series, Garry Kasparov's top 15 games. I would be looking at a series of Garry Kasparov versus Anatoly Karpov. After that, after if I have some time, I would be looking at that, and not now for the moment. But I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked my analysis. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Cheers. Bye.